Hello there and welcome to another air tutoring YouTube session. So to keep on going now with the idea that we've been discussing for the past session, we're still talking about slopes. In the previous session we discussed about positive slopes. Now I want to discuss a little bit about negative slopes. So the idea is still the same. We have slope, which is equal to rise over run, and that's either going up or down and then going left or right, okay, depending on what happens. So again, this idea still remains the same. We describe slope by choosing a variable, and that variable then has a numeric value like we saw in the previous examples. I went ahead and wrote some different examples over here of cases where you have a linear equation but now with a negative in front of the variable. So negative q, negative r, negative s. Okay, the variables are still q, r, and s, just that now they are negative, okay? Just like here, we saw m, a, and z, except they were positive. So this is how you would normally write it in a linear form, or linear function form, these being our slopes. Now, I went ahead and kept this here, the positive solutions from the previous session, because I wanted to go ahead and show you the difference between having positive slopes and seeing that they're always going to be going up and to the right, as opposed to having negative slopes, which are going to be a little bit different, okay? And there's a reason as to why these may be a little bit trickier, because there's a little bit more room for error. But if you know how to do it, and if you know how to point your arrows in the right direction, whether if it's up, down, left, or right, if you feel confident and if you know how to do it, that's what will allow you to understand a little bit better on negative slopes, okay? So before I start touching upon here, just a quick reminder, remember that slopes always talking about average rate of change. So again, we saw average rate of change over here. We saw change 5 or go 5 up and then change 1 to the right. So 1 over to the right. The same thing here, 2, 5, and 7 over 2. The same thing, just that the number changes, but it's still going up a certain number and then going to the right a certain number, okay? So when we talk about now negative slopes, this number 5 or this negative 5, same thing like how we saw last time. You can take any positive or negative number, any integer is what we normally call them. Integers are positive or negative numbers, so we can take any integer and or for the sake of just simplicity, any number, okay, positive or negative, and we can divide it by we can divide it by 1, okay, and now we have it in this form, rise over run, or number 5 over 1, like we have it over here, 5 over 1. Now we need to choose whether we are going up or down or left and right, okay? So, let me go ahead and fix that, okay. So we have a negative 5, or actually, let me not put in the negative in there and you'll see why now. So we have a 5, and we have to choose whether if it goes up or down, over a 1, and we choose whether if it goes left or right, okay? Now the 1 is very easy. We saw this before. The positive 1 was at the bottom, so it's always to the right. Remember, we treat these numbers, even though they're a fraction, we inspect them for their signs independently. So the number on the top is a positive and the number on the bottom is a positive. This is very important because when we get to these examples, you're going to see that we can actually choose where we put the sign. So remember, if a number on the top is positive, it's always going to go up. If a number on the bottom is positive, it's always going to go to the right. So here we see that. We see that number 1 is positive, so for sure it'll be going to the right. Now the difference here is 5, because 5 was negative. So now why didn't I put the negative 5 over here? Because right now these numbers, I'm just talking about direction. The sign of the number is over here. It's a negative 5 over a positive 1. Right? So positive 1 will give me to the right, but a negative 5, it won't take me up, but it'll take me down. So now, instead of it being a up to the right, now it is a down and to the right, okay? And again, I'm going to use these same exact slopes to show you examples in the third video of actually graphing these slopes, okay, and showing you a little bit about how each one of these slopes has its own unique way of appearing, okay. They each look very different to each other. Even though we're talking about the same idea, which is slope, each slope is different to each other, and because they're different, they're going to look differently, and you're going to see a little bit more about that in the third video. So here we have a 5 going down and a 1 going to the right. Now over here with this next fraction, this is the part where people make a lot of mistakes. They say, okay, I have negative 2 over 5. So that means I have to have negative 2 over negative 5. That's wrong. Never put the negative in both sides. You have to choose which part of the fraction you put it on. If you're going to put it on the top or the numerator, or if you're going to put it on the bottom, the denominator, okay? So for this sake, I'll go ahead and choose the top. And then for this one, I'll go ahead and choose the bottom. So positive 7 over negative 2, okay? In here, now we have the flip of this top one, okay? Because we had a negative on the top, positive on the bottom. Oh, I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry. These two are the same. So now, as you can see, we have these two. They're identical in terms of sign. Negative on the top, positive on the bottom. So you know for sure. Now when we talk about direction, it's going to be 2 down and 5 up. I'm sorry, 5 to the right. And over here, we have the flip of the sign, okay? So here it's, instead of the negative being on the top, now the negative is on the bottom. So again, we just go ahead and say, well, hey, I have 7 and I need to choose if it goes up or down, which we should already know what direction it goes, because we saw that whenever we have a positive number at the top, it always goes up. So this one for sure will go up. And we have a negative 2 at the bottom, which we need to see if it goes left or right. And again, it's pretty easy to see. Whenever this number was positive at the bottom, over here and over here, it always goes to the right. Whenever the number is negative, the only other option is that it goes to the left. So in this scenario, remember, we always do the top value first and then the bottom value, or to even be true to rise over run, we always change vertically, okay? So if I have a point, some random point, and I'm going to draw it over here, and I want to apply a slope to it, the number one thing is that I put my pen or my pencil on that point, I rise or I go down. In this case, I'll rise, and then I run in a certain direction. And to change it up a little bit, I went up and I'm going to go left. Let's say I had a slope like that. And then I'm going to put my other point right there wherever I finish, and I'm going to go ahead and write my line after that, okay? So with this, we'll see a little bit more of that in the third part of the video, where we'll get into more of the graphing of the slope and graphing of linear functions, and we'll be able to understand a little bit more about what these values in these directions that we've gotten here, what they mean. And in the end, hopefully you will leave with a clear understanding of what the slope means, okay? Thank you very much again for joining. If you have any comments or any questions or concerns, please leave them down below in the comment section. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the third video. Have a good one.